get into the question of the day. Let's see what we. I really hope I. All right, cool. I did screenshot it.
Yeah.
I was like, damn, I don't even know if I got it. All right, so the question is, you are allowed to choose which family you are born into for the next life.
Oh.
You're giving these three choices. Which one would you pick? Option 1, an extremely wealthy couple with slight marital problems. They live in a mansion in a very wealthy area with luxury cars. Both of your parents have worked less than a week of their life, but they are always busy with something and barely have time for you. Vacations are very frequent and are done at exotic locations like Maldives, Bali. Y'all get the picture. Option 2, a well-off couple with few marital problems. They live in a classic 2-story suburban house with a basic car for each in a suburb. Both come from semi-humble backgrounds, and one is a doctor while another is a nurse. They have the weekends off for you and their family, along with an hour in the evening every couple of days a week. Vacations are taken 2 to 3 times a year, usually overseas. Option 3 is a working class couple with no marital problems. Both are recent migrants that work entry-level jobs. They live in an apartment in a big city, which they rent. They have much more time off for you as they don't bring any work home. Vacations are taken once a week, usually a road trip to a different state. All options are basically families that live in the United States.
Okay. And you said vacations are taken once a week?
Once a year. For option 3?
Once a year.
For option 3, it's once a year.
Okay. Interesting. Do you have a response already, or would you like me to go?
I'd like you to go. I'm curious on how.
I'm gonna actually pick option 3.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're going to pick the working class couple.
The working class couple that has no marital issues, that on the weekends has time for me as a child, and we take vacations, I guess, once a year. That would have to be my choice.
Why is that?
Frankly, that's kind of what I come from already. That's what I'm used to. I don't come from money. Like I come from, and I'm not gonna say I come from trenches either. Like I didn't really grow up in the hood. Like I had a decent upbringing, so I'm more used to, I guess, having that type of a life.
Okay.
So that's probably what I would go to. The biggest thing for me, though, that kind of stood out would probably be the fact that the parents don't have any marital issues. There's a lot of people who they have marital issues, and you can't understate how much of an effect that has on kids.
That is true.
Hearing hearing their parents argue at night, while the kid's in the room sleeping, that has an effect on them. Maybe the dad puts his hands on the mom, so he's like, damn, now that kid has that vision of, well, maybe this is okay to do. All of it trickles down to them.
Okay.
So if they don't have no marital issues, they have time for me as a kid, they're willing to spend time with me and such. What more could I really want? They're providing for me as parents.
That is true.
They're willing to give to me as a kid.
That is true.
So I kind of see that as a beneficial thing. The reason I probably wouldn't pick the first one is they wouldn't have time for me. As much as it'd be lavish, I get to have the vacations and all that stuff. Like, where my parents at?
Bro, there's a story. It's hard for me to really say the story, but I'll kind of give you a gist. But it was basically like, there was this kid, and he basically grew up damn near option 1, like very wealthy, but his parents really have time for him. But he grew up in like a very wealthy, his parents were rich, whatever he wanted, he can get. I'm not sure if he was a prince or what he was, but we're talking about he was well off.
Question, was it during this time or is it back in the day?
I think it was back in the day.
Okay.
Like this is like a while ago. But essentially I say this to say that he was like quite depressed. And like,
really?
Like sad, even though he had like everything.
Because he ain't had the love and the affection from his parents.
Exactly.
That's a big thing, man. That's a very big thing.
Sometimes even a struggle is like it's kind of like good for you.
Yeah, adversity creates character.
Exactly. It also helps you like cope. And I think in the scenario with this guy was he had a very hard time because he never knew what hard times was. He was always given everything.
Yep.
But crazy enough, he ended up being depressed. To live in a mansion, to have millions of dollars, they were very wealthy. He basically could do whatever he wanted, he got. But it was very, very sad. It was kind of crazy. I'd actually pick option 2.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah. Crazy enough. You know what's crazy? I feel like our options are kind of similar to how we are right
Yeah, exactly. It kind of comes back
because
to what we've experienced.
Me personally, I also didn't grow up from money.
Yeah.
But I did kind of grow up a little bit well off. My parents, I'm very blessed. My sister saw more of the struggle than I did. But by the time I was born, my parents were kind of on the up and up.
You came out of the
like we're moving out of the hood.
Yeah.
My parents both came from very humble backgrounds. They both were very, very poor.
Yeah.
My mother grew up basically like in the country down south. My father grew up in the hood in New York City. So like they had no money. I remember them telling me a lot of stories. They were broke. They had no money.
Yeah.
And when my sisters came along, they still were broke. They still had no money. But around that time, I think my father ended up getting a good job. My mother got a good job, and they were both working. But by the time I came along,
that progression was already
they
there.
basically were like, like they saw progress. They already put all those years together. I came along. Now they're like, okay, we're going to actually kind of move out the hood.
Yeah.
So my sisters got that.
They experienced that
Yeah.
earlier.
So they experienced both.
Yeah.
They experienced growing up in the hood and it being rough. And then they kind of experienced, oh, shit,
Coming
this is
out
what
of
it's like in the suburbs.
Yeah.
I'm kind of blessed because I came along.
You only experienced the suburbs.
Exactly. We moved to the suburbs. I was one.
Yeah.
That's
all you know.
That's all I knew.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed it. We ain't take as many vacations, like 2 to 3 times a year. Yeah, that wasn't a thing. That wasn't a thing. So I think that part would be kind of cool. I do agree with you. It's very good it's best. I don't think it's best that they have no type of marital problems, but that definitely does take a toll, and it can take a toll.
I think if you have marital problems, just try to keep it to y'all two.
But here's the one thing though that I've kind of noticed, because I feel like everybody. This is obviously a hypothetical.
Of course.
There's marital problems in every marriage.
Yeah, it's gonna
like,
happen.
No marriages.
It's gonna happen.
But here's a good thing, I guess, as a kid seeing marital problems is you kind of see how they work through it. So like,
okay,
you could kind of see
how it's handled.
Exactly. So like, okay, y'all are beefing, y'all are mad at each other. I might hear you guys screaming or whatever, but I kind of could see them essentially work through it and get past it.
Yeah.
So now I can kind of see like, oh, this is how marriage is. My parents have been married for 26 years, something like that. Yeah. And of course, all that shit wasn't all cookies
sunshine
and cake.
and rainbows.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But what I kind of enjoyed, I mean, I hated when they argued, but like what I also kind of saw was like, oh, like y'all worked past it.
Yeah.
Like y'all didn't argue and then leave.
Exactly.
Y'all didn't argue and then one of them left.
They never gave up.
Exactly. So it showed to me like, oh shit, like y'all could still argue and beef, but like that shit don't break the family.
Because they knew the arguments were bigger than them. They got 3 kids to take care of.
Exactly.
3 dependents.
It kind of helped me see how a marriage should work, or even how a relationship should work. It's like, even though y'all beefing, that doesn't mean that we gonna end the relationship. Just because we upset with each other does not mean that now everything is gonna be over. It's like, nope, we're gonna continue to talk it out, we're gonna continue to work it out, and we're gonna find a way to move past this. And frankly, all of us, I'm the youngest, I'm 23, my sisters are much older, but my parents are still together. They've been together for 26 years, and we all done seen them argue, but we also saw that, oh, bro, like, essentially, like, that love prevailed. Like, that shit ain't fail. They didn't let it fail. They didn't let stupid, petty arguments last that long. And they essentially found a way to work it out and talk it out and then get back to loving each other. So I think that was, like, the good thing of seeing my parents argue. Because, like, damn, it sucks mom and dad are arguing, but it's like, oh, wow, you guys still, well, y'all worked it out. Oh, we cool again. Oh, wow, okay. So now when I have my relationships, that's kind of how I try to
do the same.
Exactly. Like, just because we argue does not mean the relationship's over. It just means we're going through a rough patch. Depending on what we're arguing about, of course. Like, if it's cheating or something like that, that's a little different.
That's a little extreme.
But just because y'all argue does not mean it needs to be over. And that's what
disagreements are going to happen.
And that's kind of what seeing a little bit of marital beef taught me. So I actually kind of appreciated it a little.
That's a very interesting point you bring up. I never really thought about it like that, wherein the kids seeing that, because I've always heard of stories of kids hearing their parents argue and it really having like an effect on them. Yeah. And I know a lot of adults, they have trauma from childhood that they never work through. True. And they end up bringing it into the relationships. So I think it's a very interesting point that you bring up, wherein as parents, when you like argue with your husband or your wife, y'all work through it and actually show the kids you working through it.
Yeah.
So they have a good idea of, okay, especially your daughter seeing how dad works through things with mom, and vice versa, how son sees how dad that works things through mom, and vice versa.
Yeah.
It's I think it's a very good example of how to kind of like conflict resolution.
Type shit.
I think it's a very good example of that.